The day I found out my sister could have children after all, I felt something inside me go quiet. Not angry, not shocked, just quiet. Like the moment before a storm decides whether it wants to break. That silence stayed with me longer than I expected. It settled in my chest like dust, fine and lingering, refusing to be brushed away. And maybe that's why I'm telling this story. Because sometimes the loudest betrayals aren't the ones that come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes they arrive in a whisper, a discovery, a quiet unraveling of everything you thought you knew. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you back. Back to when things felt simple. Back when I believed my sister, Marlene, was the one person in this world who would never hurt me. I used to say we were close, but that word doesn't do it justice. We were born 14 months apart. Irish twins, our mama called us. And all our childhood photos show us stuck to each other like two mismatched puzzle pieces. Me, taller, quieter, always reading. Her, shorter, livelier, always performing for imaginary audiences. We weren't identical in personality, but we were inseparable in spirit. There are memories that still warm me, even now. Saturday mornings when Mama made grits and sausage, and Marlene and I would sit by the window, feet tangled, planning the little futures kids dream about. Careers we didn't understand, places we couldn't pronounce, promises we thought we could keep. We said we'd raise our kids together. Backyard barbecues, matching Easter dresses, cousins who'd grow up more like siblings. That dream was ours long before we knew how complicated dreams can become. I remember the first time she ever mentioned she couldn't have children. We were in our early 20s, sitting in Mama's kitchen with a plate of hot biscuits between us. She was staring at the steam rising from her coffee, something real heavy sitting in her eyes. She said, "I can't," she whispered, her voice small. "Doctors, they say I won't ever be able to carry." I reached for her hand so fast I nearly knocked that coffee over. I held her tightly, promising support, love, understanding, all the things a sister ought to promise. And she cried. She cried in that broken way someone cries when they've been holding something in for too long. From that moment on, her infertility became a part of our family language. A quiet ache everyone tiptoed around, an open wound we all pretended had scabbed over. She leaned on me, hard, and I let her, gladly. When she distanced herself from baby showers, I covered for her. When she found it too painful to attend family gatherings with kids running around, I stayed home with her. When she hinted that Mama and Daddy should be gentle about future inheritance plans for her sake, I didn't question it. I just trusted her. Now, looking back, I see how trust can be molded into a leash by the wrong hands. But then I would have given her the world if she'd asked for it. Our lives settled into different rhythms as we got older. I married my husband, Samuel, and we had our daughter, little Naomi, my miracle girl with a dimpled smile and a laugh that could brighten any room. And though she celebrated the birth with me, I could see the pain behind her eyes. It wasn't jealousy in a cruel way, more like grief. I tried to be sensitive, careful not to gush about motherhood too much in front of her. I never wanted her to feel like she was less. She never asked for pity, never asked for anything outright, but whenever discussions of Mama and Daddy's will came up, she'd get quiet, pinch her lips, and I, feeling guilty for what I had that she didn't, always told our parents, "Whatever you leave behind, make sure she's taken care of. I'll be fine." I repeated that for years. I never imagined how those words would come back to haunt me. The last few years of our parents' lives were heavy ones. Daddy passed first, a sudden heart attack that left us all adrift. Mama followed a year later, not from illness but from heartbreak, I think. Losing Daddy took the wind out of her. In their passing, Marlene and I leaned on each other more than ever. We sat through lawyers' meetings together, sorted through belongings, donated clothes, chose which photos to keep, held on to each other when the house was emptied and the echo of their absence became too loud to bear. And when the will was finally read, it wasn't surprising that Mama and Daddy left the house, the one asset with real value, to Marlene. Not to me. Marlene. The one who couldn't have children, the one with the dream that was denied, the one who, according to Mama's handwritten note tucked into the will folder, needed the stability more. At the time, I accepted it without blinking. I told Samuel, "She deserves it. She's been through enough." He nodded, even though I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But love makes you blind to the shadows closest to you. And for a while, after Mama and Daddy's funerals, life resumed its slow, familiar rhythm. I focused on work, on raising Naomi, on tending the small comforts of home. I didn't think about the inheritance again, or about how Marlene started avoiding me just a little bit, or about how she always rushed off the phone when I asked simple questions. I chalked it up to grief. We all grieve differently. I didn't realize grief was the least of what she was hiding. The first crack in the facade came on a quiet Sunday morning. The kind of morning where the world feels still. Pancakes on the stove, Naomi humming in the living room, sunlight slipping through the curtains just right. I was checking my email when a message popped up from a mutual friend of ours, a woman named Kay. The subject line read, "Congratulations to your sister." Nothing else. No explanation. Just that. My heart didn't leap. It didn't pound. It just paused. The way it does when some part of you knows something isn't right. I typed back, "What happened?" Kay replied within minutes. "Her baby finally came. I saw the post. I'm so happy for her." Baby? Post? I felt the world tilt just a little. My hands went cold, even though the kitchen was warm. I opened my social media, fingers trembling just enough to make tapping the screen awkward. And there it was. A single photo. Marlene, glowing in a way I had never seen before, holding a baby, a tiny, perfect baby, in her arms. Her smile was wide, radiant, triumphant. The caption read, "Welcome home, my little miracle." My breath caught, and in that suspended moment, that breathless, aching moment, I realized my sister, the woman who had cried in my hands 20 years ago, saying she could never have children, had a baby. She had a baby. And she hadn't told me. Not one word, not a whisper, not even a hint. That was the beginning. The unraveling. The quiet storm finally deciding it was time to break. I don't remember sitting down, but somehow I ended up at the kitchen table, staring at that photo until my eyes blurred. Naomi was still humming in the living room, and Samuel was rinsing dishes, unaware of the earthquake happening quietly inside me. A baby. My sister had a baby, and I had found out the same way any stranger would, from a social media post. I felt this strange pressure in my chest, like someone had set a brick right behind my ribcage. Not anger, not yet. More like disbelief wrapped in hurt. A kind of ache that doesn't have a name. I clicked through her profile. More photos. A crib, a tiny hat, a pair of baby socks, all posted within the last 24 hours. None of them included me. None of them tagged me. None of them even hinted that she'd told me privately. Samuel dried his hands and turned to me. "You okay, honey?" I lifted my phone and showed him the photo. "Did you know about this?" He leaned in, squinting. Is that Marlene?" "Yeah, and that's a baby." He blinked, baffled. Then his eyebrows drew together slowly, cautiously, the way they always did when he thought a situation didn't make sense. "I thought he started gently. You know, couldn't?" "So did I." The room fell into a heavy silence, the kind that feels like the air thickens around you. Samuel pulled up a chair beside me. Did she call you? No. Message you? No. He sat back, exhaling. That's strange. But it wasn't just strange. It was wrong. And the wrongness crawled through me, cold and quiet. I typed out a message to her, my fingers stiff, my breath shallow. Me. Congratulations. When did this happen? I stared at the screen, deleted it, wrote it again, deleted it again. My final version was smaller, simpler. Congratulations. I just saw the news. I sent it. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. No reply. Instead, she kept posting photos. A close-up of the baby's fingers, a shot of the nursery, a picture of her smiling down at the newborn with a look I didn't recognize. A kind of pride wrapped in victory. By noon, I was pacing the living room, pretending to straighten throw pillows I had already straightened. Naomi had gone to her friend's house for the afternoon, leaving the house too quiet, too hollow. Samuel watched me carefully like he expected me to explode. But I didn't explode. I folded. Quietly, internally, in ways no one could see. I kept replaying our childhood conversations in my head. The tears she shed, the way she had clung to me whenever someone else announced a pregnancy, the way she had avoided family gatherings with babies, the way she had leaned heavily on the sympathy that came with her infertility. Was all of that a lie? No, that wasn't fair. Infertility is personal, painful, complex. But secrecy was different. Why didn't she tell me she was adopting? Why didn't she include me in the moment that was supposed to be the happiest of her life? Why did the world get to celebrate her joy before her own sister even knew anything was happening? My phone buzzed around 2 p.m. Marlene. Thanks. Just that. One word. A word so small it felt insulting. I stared at it, waiting for the rest, waiting for the explanation, waiting for the apology, waiting for the conversation. But nothing else came. Finally, I typed, "When did you decide to adopt?" She left me on red. My stomach twisted, not with anger, but with a deep, uneasy realization. She didn't want to talk to me. I tried again, this time gentler. I would have liked to have been there for you. Again, read. No reply. Samuel rested a hand on my shoulder. Baby, maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe she's tired. Maybe. But overwhelmed people don't post 15 photos in 6 hours while ignoring their sister's messages. This wasn't exhaustion. This was avoidance. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. She hadn't posted the adoption process. Not a hint. No paperwork, no agency updates, no fundraising, no prayer requests. Usually, people adopting a baby drop at least some breadcrumbs. But she'd been completely silent. Suspiciously silent. My mind flickered back to Mama and Daddy's will, to her refusing to talk about money, to her sudden distance in the months after they passed, to how she'd insisted she needed the house because she'd never be able to build a family of her own. A chill crept up my spine. Samuel noticed the shift in my breathing. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I whispered, "that maybe this wasn't sudden." "You think she was planning this?" "No," I said slowly, my voice unsteady. "I think she already had the child, or knew she'd get one, and I think she hid it. On purpose." "To do what?" I met his eyes, and the words tasted bitter leaving my mouth. "To get the inheritance." Samuel's face changed, Not dramatically, but in the subtle, careful way of someone who suddenly sees a puzzle piece snap into place. You think she lied? About everything? I don't know. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the beginnings of a headache pulsing behind my eyes. I just know none of this adds up. We sat there for a long time, both too quiet, both pretending we weren't thinking the worst. But once suspicion sets in, it doesn't go away. It grows. Quietly, steadily, like mold behind wallpaper. Over the next few days, I tried again and again to talk to her. Short messages, phone calls, voicemails, nothing. Meanwhile, she was posting constantly. Her new life, her new baby, her new home, all looking picture perfect. She seemed triumphant, like someone who had won something. But she ignored me. Her own sister. The sister who'd comforted her through heartbreak after heartbreak. The sister who'd defended her when people whispered behind her back. The sister who'd given up her share of the inheritance so she could have stability. The silence became its own kind of betrayal. And then, one evening, 4 days after the first photo, I received a message from an unexpected source. Our cousin, Tasha. Tasha. Hey, have you talked to your sister? There's something you should know. My pulse kicked hard. Me. What is it? And when her next message came, it was only 6 words. 6 words that would change everything. She didn't adopt that baby yesterday. The air left my lungs. My fingers trembled as I typed. Then when? A long pause. Then, a long time ago. A long time ago. Not yesterday, not last week, not last month. A long time ago. And that's when the cracks in my trust became fractures. And those fractures became something sharp. Something that would soon cut deeper than I ever imagined. I stared at Tasha's message so long the screen dimmed twice. A long time ago. The words felt like someone had dropped a stone into my stomach. My hands were shaking as I typed. Me. What do you mean a long time ago? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Tasha. Look, I shouldn't even be the one telling you this, but she told some people, not everyone, but enough. A pause. She's had that baby for months. Months. The breath went out of me in a short, painful burst. What? Samuel asked from across the room, hearing the sound. I handed him the phone. I watched the shock ripple across his face. His eyebrows shot upward, then pulled tight together. Months? He whispered. I nodded, swallowing hard. My body was trying to protect me from the words. I typed again, faster this time. Me. How many months, Tasha? This time she answered quickly. At least 6, maybe more. 6 months. Half a year. Half a year of my sister having a baby, a living, breathing child, and hiding it from me. Posting nothing, saying nothing, pretending nothing had changed. And suddenly, every detail clicked into place, like a puzzle that had been upside down until someone turned it over. The quiet withdrawal, the sudden distance after the will, the refusal to come visit, the strange excuses for why she couldn't talk on the phone. Always busy, always tired, always not feeling well. I can't. I covered my mouth, pacing. What kind of person does this? Samuel stood and came to me, placing his hands gently on my arms. I could feel the steadiness in his touch, the attempt to ground me, but the floor still felt shaky. Babe, he said softly, you need to sit down. No, I said, breathless. No, I need to understand. I messaged Tasha again. Me. Why didn't she tell me? Why would she lie? Tasha took longer this time. When her message appeared, it was hesitant, careful. Tasha, people think it might be about the inheritance. I felt something inside me twist violently, grief grinding into anger. She continued. She said she didn't want drama. She said if people knew earlier, some might question her intentions about the house. Then, she said you would make it difficult. My jaw dropped. Make it difficult? I would have thrown her a baby shower. I would have driven to her house at 2 a.m. with diapers if she needed them. I would have helped, celebrated, supported. But she didn't want support. She wanted secrecy. And she wanted the house, our parents' house, uninterrupted. I felt heat rising under my skin, like anger was a fever. Samuel's voice broke through my thoughts. What did she say? I handed him the phone again. As he read, his expression hardened. Slow, controlled, not explosive, but deeply, protectively angry. The kind of anger Samuel rarely showed. She told people you would make it difficult? He repeated quietly. Apparently. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. That's not just a lie. That's character assassination. It's betrayal, I whispered. And hearing myself say the word made something inside me break. Not loudly, not dramatically, just break. I sat down on the edge of the couch, feeling the weight of 6 months crashing into me all at once. My sister, my only sibling, had lived a whole new life without me in it. A life she carefully crafted to keep me out. Do you want to call her? Samuel asked. The question made my heart pound. No, I said, breathless. No, I need to call her right now. I'll scream. He nodded, understanding. But deep down, I knew a storm was building and I wouldn't be able to hold it back forever. That night, after Samuel went to bed, I stayed up in the dark living room, scrolling through her posts again and again, analyzing every detail. The nursery paint was fully dried. The closet was stocked neatly. The crib mattress had indentations, as if used for more than just a day or two. There were photos that were clearly not taken within the last 24 hours. Different outfits, different lighting, her hair in a style she hadn't worn in months. Then I saw something I'd missed before. In one picture, she was holding the baby while standing near a window. Behind her, the trees were green, full, summer leaves. But she had posted the announcement in late fall. A summer photo, months before the announcement. That was the moment the truth hit me with full force. She never meant to tell me at all. Not until she couldn't hide it anymore. Not until she had secured everything she wanted, the sympathy, the house, the narrative. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit my hand. Not loud crying, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted tears for someone I thought I knew. In the dim light, I whispered to myself, "Why would you do this to me?" The question lingered in the empty room like an echo. I didn't get an answer, just more silence. The next morning, I woke up with a decision lodged firmly in my chest. I wasn't going to be ignored. I wasn't going to be lied about, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite our family story without my voice in it. I called her. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I sent a message. We need to talk now. Left unread. That was the moment something inside me snapped cleanly. Not out of rage, but of clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. If she wouldn't come to me, I would go to her. I grabbed my bag, my keys, my car charger. Samuel stepped into the hallway, sleep still in his eyes. Where are you going? To get the truth, I said. His expression changed instantly, concern replacing grogginess. You're going to her house? Yes. Do you want me to come? I hesitated. A long moment. Then I shook my head. No, this is between me and her. He studied me for a moment, then stepped forward and kissed my forehead. Drive safe, and, try to stay calm. I will try. But I wasn't sure I could, because once someone lies about something this big, and lies about you to cover it, calm stops being an option. I walked out the door, heart pounding with a mixture of dread and resolve. And as I started the car, one thought echoed louder than anger, louder than fear. My sister has been hiding more than just a baby. I could feel it, and I was about to find out exactly what. I didn't knock right away. I stood there with my hand raised, frozen midair, listening. There was a soft humming coming from inside, almost like someone speaking, low and gentle. Then a small laugh. A child's laugh. Unmistakable now that I was close. My fingers went numb. I knocked. The humming stopped. For a moment, everything went still on the other side of that door. No footsteps, no voice, just silence. Then, just a second, she sounded breathless. Not sick, not fragile, not like the woman who had cried on my couch only 3 weeks earlier, swearing she'd never know motherhood. I heard shuffling, whispering, a chair scraping the floor. The door opened only halfway. Sarah peered out. Her hair a little messy, her eyes wide, like a child caught sneaking cookies. Except cookies don't giggle in the background. "Oh," she said too brightly, "you didn't call." I swallowed. I didn't think I needed an appointment to see my own sister. Her jaw tightened. "Well, you know I like to rest during the day." Behind her, a shadow moved, small, fast, curious. My stomach twisted. "Sarah, who's in there?" I whispered. She tried blocking the view with her body, but when something tugs at the hem of your shirt from behind, you can't hide it. A tiny hand appeared, gripping the back of her sweater. Then a little face popped out. Round cheeks, big brown eyes, maybe 4 years old. A little girl in a yellow dress holding a stuffed rabbit. She looked up at me, unafraid. Actually, she smiled. "Hi," she chirped. Everything in me splintered. Not because she existed, but because my sister had built her entire identity around a lie. And I had built mine around protecting her. She whipped around and gently pushed the girl back inside. "Sweetheart, go finish your drawing. Auntie and I are talking, okay?" Auntie. The word punched the air out of my lungs. After the girl padded away, Sarah slipped out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind her, like she was sealing away evidence. We stood in silence. I felt my pulse in my ears. "Say something," she whispered. "What do you want me to say?" My voice cracked. "You lied to me! About everything!" Her throat bobbed. It wasn't everything." "Your infertility?" I asked. "Your hospital treatments? The episodes where you'd cry in my arms because you'd never feel a baby kick? Your birthday last year when you said you wished God had made you a real woman?" She shut her eyes as if each reminder stung. I didn't know what else to do. "What about our parents' wills, Sarah?" My voice shook. "And the estate lawyers saying the inheritance could be adjusted if circumstances changed, like if one of us had a child. You use that." She snapped her eyes open. "I didn't plan it like that." "Didn't you?" I whispered. She leaned her head against the door as if suddenly exhausted. "I was scared, okay? You've always been the stable one, the responsible one. Mom and Dad trusted you with everything. And when they died, I knew I'd lose the house. So you lied to me for sympathy? So I wouldn't question anything?" My chest tightened. I needed a way to keep her safe. "So she is your daughter?" I asked softly. Her eyes softened, the first honest emotion I'd seen in minutes. Yes, I adopted her last year. Quietly. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want her taken away if I messed up. I knew you'd be protective, maybe even suspicious. Because we're sisters, I said. And sisters notice. She nodded, guilt carving lines into her face. I thought if you believed I couldn't have kids, you'd never connect the dots. I stared at her. How long were you going to keep pretending? She bit her lip. I don't know. Silence stretched between us, thick, suffocating. The hallway felt too small, the air too thin. For the first time in years, I didn't see my baby sister. The girl who fell off her bike and cried into my lap. The teenager who dyed her hair purple out of rebellion. The woman who said she envied my stability. I saw a stranger. A desperate stranger who had calculated my love. She reached out suddenly and grabbed my hand. I'm begging you, she whispered. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell the lawyer. Don't take the house. I pulled my hand back. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. Sarah, the issue isn't the house, I said, though the house was a part of it, a big part. It's the lie, the years of lies. I didn't know how else to survive, she murmured. The weight of her words hit me harder than her lie. She wasn't heartless. She was terrified. But fear doesn't justify manipulation. After a moment, I said, let me meet her. Her head snapped up. What? If she's my niece, then I deserve to know her, and she deserves to know the truth. She hesitated. Then slowly she pushed the door open and stepped aside. The warm smell of cinnamon and crayons drifted out. The living room was cluttered. Picture books, little shoes, the remnants of a half-eaten apple. On the coffee table lay a sheet of paper with a purple crayon drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one small. The little girl looked up from the floor and waved. Are you Auntie? Yes, sweetheart, I am, I managed. Mommy said you were nice. I swallowed hard. Mommy. Sarah's eyes flickered with shame. I knelt down beside the girl. What's your name? Leela, she said proudly. Leela. A name I should have heard on day 1. A name my sister should have shared without fear. Can I show you my drawing? She asked. Of course, I said. As she babbled excitedly about her purple stick figures, my hands trembled. Not from anger, from heartbreak. This little girl hadn't asked for any of this. She didn't deserve to be weaponized, hidden, or used as a bargaining chip. But then again, neither did I. I looked up at Sarah, who stood watching us with a fragile sort of hope, like she believed this moment might save her. It wouldn't, but it was a beginning. A painful, complicated beginning. And I hadn't even told her yet what I planned to do about the inheritance. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, staring into a mug of cold tea, listening to the refrigerator hum in the silence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Leela's smile, and then I saw Sarah's face, that mix of guilt, fear, and stubbornness. I kept hearing her voice. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell the lawyer. Don't take the house. She had said those words as if the only danger she faced was losing property. But what she didn't seem to understand, what I couldn't make her understand in that moment, was that the real loss had already happened. She'd lost my trust, my loyalty, my belief that we were in this life together. I didn't want revenge. God knows I'd seen how revenge eats people alive. But I couldn't pretend anymore. Couldn't carry the lie with her like a secret child on my back. I needed clarity. and clarity always came to me in daylight. The next morning, the sky was dull gray, like someone had painted over the sun with an old brush. I dressed slowly, thinking through every memory, every conversation with my sister over the past few years. The infertility tests she claimed were too expensive, the doctor's visits she said went terribly, the late-night tearful calls. Every one of those moments had felt real. But they were performances, carefully crafted scenes meant to build the story she needed me, and everyone else, to believe. I drove to my parents' old house, the one place I could think without interruption. I still had the key. It sat in my pocket like a stone. The house felt colder than I remembered, even though it was only early autumn. Maybe houses know when love has drained from them. Maybe walls remember grief. Dust floated in the air like unsettled memories. I walked room to room, touching the back of Dad's recliner, the chipped paint on the kitchen door frame where Mom measured our heights. I knelt by the fireplace, picking at the grooves in the stone where Sarah once stuffed her chewing gum when she thought no one was looking. All that history! And now this. The will had been written when our parents believed in us, in both of us, believing we'd honor each other, care for each other. They never imagined deceit. I finally sank onto the couch and let the weight of everything settle over me. I had a choice. Expose her and protect the inheritance, or protect her and bury the betrayal. There was no option that didn't hurt. My phone buzzed. At first I ignored it, but then I saw the name Miss Holden, my parents' estate lawyer. My heart skipped. I answered. "Hello?" "Good morning," she said warmly. "I'm calling because I need both your signatures as we finalize the property distribution. Your sister already signed her portion." "Already?" "Yes, she came in yesterday afternoon." Yesterday afternoon, the same day I confronted her. The same day she said she didn't know what to do. Miss Holden continued, her tone polite, unaware of the storm forming in my chest. "Once I have your signature, the documents will be filed. As you know, the will leaves the primary property, including the house, to you, unless circumstances change." Unless circumstances change. Meaning, unless one of us had children. Meaning, unless someone lied. "I understand," I said quietly. "Could I come in this afternoon?" "Of course." I hung up slowly, the phone feeling too heavy in my hand. Sarah had been busy. She hadn't waited to talk, she hadn't apologized, she hadn't even tried to fix anything. She had rushed to secure her stake in my parents' legacy, a legacy she had manipulated me into protecting for her. My jaw tightened. That was the moment I realized something. Loving someone doesn't mean being their shield. Sometimes loving someone means holding them accountable. I didn't go to the lawyer's office just yet. I drove to a small cafe first, one where Mom used to take us for hot chocolate when we were little. The same cafe where Sarah spilled an entire cup of cocoa on my backpack and cried for 20 minutes because she thought I'd never forgive her. Funny how guilt looks different when you're older. I ordered a coffee, sat by the window, and wrote everything down in a notebook. Every lie, every timeline, every conversation with my sister over the past few years. The infertility tests she claimed were too expensive. The doctor's visits she said went terribly. The late-night tearful calls. Every one of those moments had felt real. But they were performances. Carefully crafted scenes meant to build the story she needed me, and everyone else, to believe. Now she had a daughter. An innocent child who deserved stability, honesty. A mother who didn't hide pieces of herself just to get ahead. If I kept enabling her, I'd be hurting more than myself. I'd be hurting that little girl, letting her grow up in a world built on lies. I took a deep breath. Then I left the cafe and drove straight to Sarah's apartment. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been standing behind it the whole time, waiting. Her face was blotchy from crying, or maybe fear. "Please," she whispered, "please don't do anything." I stepped inside, calm but firm. "We need to talk." Lila wasn't there, probably at preschool. Good. This wasn't a conversation she needed to hear. Her hand shook as she twisted a dish towel between them. "Are you going to the lawyer?" "Yes." Her breath hitched. To tell her?" "To tell the truth," I said. "To tell my part honestly." She sank onto the couch like her legs gave out. "I'll lose everything." "No," I said evenly. "You'll lose what isn't yours." She flinched. For a long moment, she stared at me, eyes glistening, and I saw something I hadn't seen in her for years. Raw, unfiltered fear. Not fear of consequences. Fear of herself. She didn't trust her own decisions. She didn't believe she could parent without manipulation. She didn't believe she deserved stability unless she took it from someone else. "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked softly. "Why didn't you just tell me you adopted her?" She pressed her hands to her face, muffling her voice. "Because I didn't think you'd believe I could be a mother." Her words hit deeper than the lie ever did. Because they were honest, and because they were wrong. I sat down across from her. "I believe you can be a mother, Sarah, but not like this. Not by lying. Not by stealing sympathy." She shook her head violently. "I don't have a choice. If I don't have help, I'll drown." "Then ask for help. Don't manipulate it." Silence. "You have a choice," I added gently. "You can come with me to the lawyer today, tell her the truth yourself, or I'll go alone." Her shoulders shook. Her entire world, her false world, was collapsing. And I wasn't stopping it. I was letting it fall, for both our sakes. Sarah didn't answer me right away. She sat there on the couch, staring at the floor like it might open and swallow her. The morning light through the blinds stretched across her face in narrow lines, making her look smaller, younger, like the girl who used to hide behind me on the first day of school. "Just come with me," I urged gently. "It's better if the truth comes from you." Her chin trembled. "I can't." "You can," I said. "You just don't want to." She let out a broken laugh, the kind that wasn't really a laugh at all. "Do you know how embarrassing it is to admit you lied about something like that? Infertility? People will hate me." I shook my head. People will respect honesty more than manipulation. Silence. The clock on her wall ticked softly. Finally, she whispered, "I need time." "You've had time," I said, not unkindly. "But I can't keep waiting, and neither can the lawyer or the paperwork." She looked like she was going to argue, then deflated. "Do what you think is right," she whispered. "You always do." But it wasn't admiration in her voice. It was resentment. And that hurt more than I expected. The lawyer's office was a quiet, polished place that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. Miss Holden greeted me with a warm smile, unaware of the emotional battle burning behind my eyes. "Before we finalize anything," I began, "I need you to know the circumstances have changed." She adjusted her glasses. "Of course. What has changed?" I took a breath. "My sister has a child." Her pen froze midair. "Oh, I see. She told everyone she couldn't have children, but she adopted privately last year." "That certainly impacts distribution." Ms. Holden said, flipping open a new folder. But legally, whether the child is biological or adopted makes no difference in this context. My chest tightened. I knew that, but hearing it confirmed made something inside me twist, a mix of relief and sorrow. Sarah was a mother, and that meant Lila had a legal claim to our family's legacy. Ms. Holden continued, "Your parents' will stated that the primary residence goes to you unless a dependent child exists for either heir. In that case, the property is to be shared or sold with proceeds split proportionally." "I am aware," I said quietly. Ms. Holden softened her gaze. "Are you asking to proceed with the adjusted division?" I hesitated. This was the moment everything tilted, the moment I either protected myself or protected a child who had no part in the lies swirling around her. "Yes," I said finally. "Proceed with the adjusted division." She nodded gently. "I'll update the documents accordingly." I signed the papers. My name looked shaky on the page, like my hand couldn't fully carry the weight of the decision. As she stamped the final document, she said, "Your sister will need to come in to sign the revised version. Should I contact her?" I shook my head. "I'll tell her." Walking out of that office felt like walking out of a courtroom. Not guilty, not victorious, just changed. The next day, the consequences arrived. Not because I spread the story, no, I hadn't told a soul. The consequence came from the one place I hadn't expected: family. A cousin called me first, then an aunt, then my mother's church friend. Apparently, Sarah had been the one to talk. Only she didn't share the truth, she shared her version of it. "She says you're trying to take the house," my cousin said breathlessly. "She says you don't want her to have inheritance because she can't have kids," said an aunt I barely spoke to. The stories multiplied like weeds, and each one painted me as cruel, greedy, heartless. The irony made me dizzy. All those years she had leaned on me, and now she leaned on pity again, twisting the truth into a weapon. My phone buzzed nonstop. I muted it, but the vibration felt like thunder in my chest. I didn't respond to anyone. Not yet. Not until I spoke to my sister first. When I went to her apartment that evening, I found her sitting on the floor, legs crossed, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Lila played quietly nearby with wooden blocks. The room felt tense, like something heavy had settled into the walls. "You told people I'm taking the house?" I said quietly. Her eyes flickered up, red and tired. "They kept asking why you were rushing the paperwork. I panicked." "No," I said softly. "You deflected." She looked away. I took a slow breath. "Sarah, I told Miss Holden to proceed with the adjusted division. You still get your share. Lila gets her share." Her head jerked up. You did?" "Yes." Confusion washed over her face. Then fear, then something close to shame. "Why?" she whispered. "After everything, why would you do that?" "Because," I said, kneeling beside her, "my anger is with you, not with your daughter." She blinked rapidly. "But you lied," I continued gently. "You manipulated me. You used something sacred, motherhood, infertility, like currency. And because of that, there are consequences." Tears pooled in her eyes. "People think terrible things about you." I nodded. "They do." "And you're still helping me?" "I'm helping her," I said, glancing at Lila. "You're her mother. I won't punish her for your choices." Her breath caught, a small, broken sound. But consequences weren't done. There was a knock at the door. Sarah flinched. "Who?" Before she finished, the door opened, She had forgotten to lock it, and our Aunt Meredith peeked in, eyes sharp with judgment. "Is it true?" she demanded, ignoring Sarah entirely as her stare zeroed in on me. "Did you force your own sister to sign away her share?" I exhaled deeply. Here it was. The public consequence. The ripple effect of lies hitting the wider family. I stood slowly. "Aunt Meredith, Sarah didn't tell you everything." Our aunt's expression hardened. "She told me enough." Sarah looked at me, terrified. This wasn't the moment to protect her lies, but it wasn't the moment to expose her shame either. So I told the truth. The clean, simple version. Sarah has a daughter, and the will accounts for that. That's all. Aunt Meredith blinked. "A daughter? Since when?" Sarah's face crumpled. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Since last year." Our aunt was stunned, then angry. At Sarah, not me. "Why lie about something so precious?" she whispered, shaking her head. "Childbirth or adoption, it's a blessing all the same." Sarah closed her eyes, covering her mouth as tears slipped out. Aunt Meredith didn't yell, didn't scold, but disappointment hung in the air like smoke, and somehow that hurt Sarah more than any accusation would have. One by one, the lies began to unravel, not because I exposed her, but because secrecy has a way of collapsing under its own weight. People started asking questions. Sarah had to answer them. I didn't shield her. I didn't smear her either. I simply told the truth when asked. And in small, painful ways, she began facing the reality she had tried so desperately to avoid. The truth wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It simply existed. And once it was out, it changed everything. It was strange how quiet everything became once the truth settled. Not peaceful quiet, more like the hush after a storm, where the trees are still dripping, the air is heavy, and nothing feels entirely safe yet. People stopped calling me, stopped prying, stopped asking for my side. They had moved on to processing her side. And in a small way, that gave me room to breathe again. But Sarah? She wasn't breathing easily, at all. For days, she avoided my calls. Not out of anger, but humiliation. The first person she spoke to wasn't me. It was Leela. I only knew because she told me weeks later. She sat her daughter down, held those tiny hands, and whispered that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they're scared. It wasn't a confession meant for a child. It was a confession she was practicing on someone who couldn't judge her. When she finally showed up at my door, she looked different. Not broken, not fragile, just honest. Like the truth had stripped her defenses and left her plain, real, unpolished. Her fingers twisted at the hem of her sweater. "Hey." I stepped aside. "Come in." She paused at the threshold, maybe expecting coldness, bitterness, or some moral lecture, but I didn't want her apology at the doorway like a delivery. We weren't that kind of family. So I waited until she sat at my kitchen table, wrapping her hands around a mug she didn't drink from. The silence stretched out like a bridge she was afraid to cross. Then she finally said it. "I'm sorry." The words weren't dramatic, no tears, no trembling voice, just truth. Clean, direct, human. I nodded slowly. "I know." She continued, voice soft. "I didn't lie because I wanted to hurt you. I lied because I didn't know how to tell the truth without losing everyone's sympathy. That stung, but it was honest. She stared into her untouched tea. When I told people I couldn't have kids, everyone was so kind. They checked on me. They made space for me. They treated me gently. And it felt good. I listened without interrupting. She needed to say this out loud, maybe for the first time. And then, when I adopted Leela, I was terrified people would stop caring, that they'd see me differently, that they'd say I didn't deserve a child, or that I was stealing someone else's. Her throat tightened, and when Mom and Dad's will came up, I knew being childless meant losing something huge. And I panicked. I kept thinking, if I admit the truth now, everyone will hate me. She stared up at me, eyes glassy but not crying. I didn't want to lose everything at once. I let her words settle between us. The truth wasn't pretty, but it was real. And real was enough. I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt, I said quietly. It did. You made decisions for me that weren't yours to make. She nodded. And you turned people against me to protect yourself. Another nod, smaller this time. But, I continued, you're here now, telling the truth. That matters. Her breath hitched in relief, like she'd been waiting for permission to forgive herself. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said simply. "But I don't trust you. Not yet." She winced. "But trust can be rebuilt," I added softly. Her shoulders sagged. "I want to earn that." "You will. If you show up honestly from now on." "I will," she promised. We didn't hug. We didn't cry dramatically or fall into each other's arms. We just sat together. Two sisters learning how to exist honestly for the first time in years. The slow rebuilding began after that. Not with big gestures, but with small, consistent ones. She invited me to Leela's preschool recital. I brought a tiny bouquet of flowers for the little one, who beamed like she'd won a Nobel Prize. Sarah didn't say anything, but her grateful smile said enough. Later, she helped me sort through our parents' kitchen drawers at the old house. We found a recipe card with Mom's handwriting stained with sauce, and we both froze. "Remember when she tried to teach us this?" I whispered. "And we burned the pan," she said with a soft laugh. The memory softened something between us. Another week, she sent me a long message. Not defensive, not excusing, just explaining. "I'm going to therapy. I need to understand why I cling to pity the way I do." That message made me exhale in a way I hadn't realized I needed. She wasn't just apologizing. She was changing. And real change is quiet. It shows up in the habits, not the speeches. The final step came months later. The closing documents of the property division arrived in the mail. The last piece of unfinished business. We met at the lawyer's office again. This time, Sarah looked steady, calm, not hiding. When she signed her portion, she didn't look at me for reassurance. She didn't tremble. She just signed. A clean line. A clean break from the lies that had tangled us for so long. As we walked out of the office, she stopped on the sidewalk and looked at me with a sincerity I hadn't seen since we were kids. "Thank you," she said, "for giving Leela a home in the family, for giving me a chance to fix things." I shrugged gently. It's what family does. We fix things. Slowly, imperfectly, together. She smiled. Small, hopeful, real. Can we get lunch? She asked. It wasn't about food. It was an invitation back into her life. I nodded. Yeah, let's go. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I was walking ahead of her or dragging her behind me. We walked side by side, at our own pace, towards something honest, towards something healed. I wish I could tell you that the meeting ended peacefully, that everyone collected their papers, shook hands politely, and went home to think about their lives. But that would have been a lie. Real family fallout never happens neatly. When people began standing, gathering their coats and bags, the room filled with the low hum of whispered judgments, the kind meant to sting more because they weren't said directly. I watched Rachel shrink, her shoulders curled inward, her eyes darting around as though she were looking for the quickest exit. She had always liked being the center of sympathy, but this was different. This was scrutiny. This was exposure. This was the kind of attention nobody enjoys. I stayed seated. I wasn't going to rush to her like I used to, smoothing things over, defending her, translating her tears to whoever was nearby. I simply watched. When she finally approached me, her steps were hesitant, as if the carpet were full of traps she wasn't sure how to avoid. Can we talk? Her voice cracked. Outside, I answered, not unkindly. We stepped out into the hallway, away from the low murmurs of relatives gathering in small clusters. A fluorescent light flickered overhead. One of those old bulbs that buzz like they're trying to whisper something they shouldn't say out loud. Rachel leaned against the wall, her arms wrapped around herself. I wasn't trying to steal anything from you, she whispered. You told everyone you were infertile. You used that lie to make them feel sorry for you. You encouraged them to believe I already had enough, that I didn't need anything from mom and dad. That's not an accident. That's manipulation. She winced. You don't know how hard my life has been, she murmured. Hard lives don't justify hurting other people. Her eyes glimmered with something. Not remorse. Not yet. More like fear. Fear of what her life would look like without the story she'd clung to all those years. Why, Rachel? I asked finally. Why did you say you couldn't have children? The question seemed to take the air out of her. Whatever strength she had been holding on to crumbled in an instant. Because, she whispered, her throat trembling, I thought if I told everyone the truth, that I didn't want kids, that I never wanted to be a mother, then nobody would understand. And I thought they'd love you more. My breath caught. There it was. The real wound. Not inheritance, not money, not paperwork. A lifetime of not feeling enough. Mom always praised you. Your grades, your job, your discipline. You were the good one, and I was the mess. And when I realized I'd never be what they wanted, I panicked. I thought, at least if I seemed broken, people would soften. My anger didn't disappear, but it shifted. It cracked open just enough for something else to get in. Rachel, I said quietly, you weren't broken. You just didn't know who you were yet. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. It got out of control. And when the adoption happened, I was afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid people would think I'd lied about everything. So I hid it. And the lie grew. And then when mom and dad died, she looked up at me with glassy eyes. I used it because I didn't know how to stop. There it was again. Not remorse, but truth. And truth, even when ugly, is still grounding. Before I could respond, a group of cousins walked by. They glanced at Rachel, then at me, and their expressions said everything. Judgment, disappointment, sympathy for me, mistrust for her. Rachel shrank again, not dramatically, not for pity, just small. "We should go home," I said softly. She blinked, surprised. "You'll drive me?" "I'll drive you." Because despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, she was still my sister. And the fallout wasn't the end of her story, or mine. The ride home. The drive was quiet. Not tense. Not anymore. Just quiet. The kind of quiet where the truth sits in the back seat with you. Still buckled in, still present, still heavy. Street lights lit across the dashboard. A song hummed faintly through the radio. Something soft, something old, something Mom used to hum when cooking. Rachel finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But the lies stop. All of them." She nodded. "And the inheritance?" "You'll talk to the lawyer," I said. "Explain what happened. Not the infertility story, the real story. About fear. About why you hid the adoption. About the spiral. Let him decide how to proceed legally." She swallowed hard. "That means I might lose everything." "No," I said. "It means you might lose some things. The difference is important." "What if you cut me out?" she whispered. I gripped the steering wheel. The question hit deeper than I expected. "I don't cut family out," I said quietly. "But I do draw boundaries." We pulled into her driveway. Her porch light flickered on automatically, motion sensor. She stared at it like it was a spotlight she didn't feel ready to step into. "Thank you for driving me," she murmured. "Get some rest," I said. "We'll figure the next steps out tomorrow." She nodded, then reached for the door, but paused. "I'm sorry," she said without looking back. "For all of it. Even the parts you don't know about yet." The words lodged in my chest. There were more truths buried beneath that sentence. Truths I'd have to dig out gently, carefully. But not tonight. Rachel stepped out and closed the door. I watched her walk up to her porch, her shoulders hunched, her steps slow. Not the triumphant sister who used to call herself Mom and Dad's survivor. Not the bitter woman who hid behind lies. Just a human being who had finally run out of places to hide. The morning after the family meeting, I woke before the sun. It wasn't intentional. My body simply refused to sink into rest. Grief does that sometimes, especially when the grief isn't about death, but about truth. I made a cup of tea the same way my mother used to. One bag, a squeeze of honey, and a splash of milk. The kitchen felt too quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. When my phone buzzed at 7:14 a.m., I already knew who it would be. Rachel. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Her voice was small. "Are you awake?" "I'm here," I said. I called the lawyer," she whispered. "Like you said." I closed my eyes. "Good. He wants us to come in this afternoon. Together." There was something fragile in her tone. Not desperation, not manipulation, just uncertainty. Like she was learning how to stand again after years of walking crooked. "I'll pick you up at 1, I said. She exhaled, shaky with relief. Okay. The lawyer's office. When I pulled into her driveway at 12:58, she was already outside waiting, holding a folder to her chest like it was a shield. She climbed into the car without speaking. The silence between us wasn't tense this time, just full. Full of everything we'd said yesterday and everything we hadn't said yet. Inside the lawyer's office, she took the lead. She explained the truth in her own voice, the adoption, the lie, the fear, the panic that grew into something unmanageable. I watched her hands tremble in her lap, but to her credit, she didn't hide them. When she finished, the lawyer sighed. Legally, he said, your parents' estate was divided based on incomplete information. Emotionally, however, only the two of you can decide how to move forward. Then he turned to me. What do you want? It was a question I had been circling for weeks, maybe months. A question I thought would come with an easy answer. Justice, correction, fairness. But as I looked at Rachel beside me, exhausted, shaken, exposed, I realized something. I didn't want revenge. Not really. Revenge doesn't heal. It only burns both sides. What I wanted was truth, balance, a future not defined by lies. So I took a deep breath. I want the estate divided fairly, as if none of the lies had ever happened. 50-50, like Mom and Dad intended. Rachel's breath hitched. But, I continued, I won't fight you over the money already spent. That won't fix anything. She stared at me as though she didn't recognize me, or maybe as though she finally did. I don't deserve that, she whispered. Maybe not, I said gently, but we can't go back. We can only go forward. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away this time. The lawyer made notes. Adjustments were filed. Clarity replaced confusion. A small step, but a step. A new kind of conversation. As we walked back to the car, the afternoon sun cast long shadows on the sidewalk. Rachel took a slow breath. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I braced myself. Adoption wasn't my backup plan, she continued. It wasn't something I did because I lied. I did it because I met him, this little boy at the center where I was volunteering. He had these huge eyes and this laugh that didn't match the sadness in his file. I fell in love with him. A softness pulled at the edge of her voice, a softness I hadn't heard in years. I wanted him, she said, but I didn't know how to explain it without unraveling everything else. This time, I didn't respond with anger or judgment. I simply asked, "Can I meet him?" She blinked at me, stunned. You want to meet him?" "Yes," I said. "If you're willing." Her mouth trembled, not with deceit, not with performance, but with genuine emotion. I'd like that," she whispered. 2 days later, I went to her house. It looked the same as always. Same beige siding, same porch light flickering at dusk. But something felt different. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was her. Inside, toys were scattered across the floor. Crayon drawings covered the fridge. It didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a home. When the little boy peeked out from behind the couch, Rachel said softly, "Sweetheart, this is your aunt." He approached cautiously, clutching a stuffed fox. He had warm eyes, the kind that made you soften just by looking at them. "Hi," he said, his voice tiny. "Hi," I replied. "I like your fox." He held it up proudly. "This is Henry. He watches cartoons with me." I smiled. "Seems like a good friend." Rachel watched us from the doorway, her hands pressed together as if she were afraid to breathe. We spent the rest of the afternoon coloring at the kitchen table, the boy chattering about dinosaurs and oranges and clouds shaped like turtles. And as I listened to him laugh, something inside me loosened. Rachel hadn't stolen a child. She hadn't used him to manipulate me. She had simply been terrified of being judged, of being misunderstood, of being less. Fear had twisted her choices. But this child, he was the one honest thing in her life. And he deserved love from both of us. Over the next few weeks, our relationship didn't magically fix itself. There were still moments when resentment flickered, still moments when her choices felt too heavy to overlook. But I drew boundaries, firm ones, and she respected them. She began therapy. She started telling the truth, even when it hurt, even when it forced her to sit in discomfort she'd avoided for years. And I let myself see her not as the villain of my life, but as a flawed human being who made terrible choices because she didn't know how else to cope. Healing isn't forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Healing is choosing peace over history. It's choosing truth over resentment. It's choosing boundaries over bitterness. And for the first time in a long time, our family felt like something that could be saved, not something permanently broken. When I look back now, it's strange how quiet the biggest turning points of our lives can be. No dramatic music, no sudden revelation in the rain. Just two sisters sitting at a kitchen table covered in crayon drawings, trying, slowly, to choose honesty over the lies we'd both lived under for years. I used to believe betrayal was the end of a relationship, that once trust was damaged, it could never be rebuilt. But I learned something I didn't expect. Sometimes betrayal isn't born from cruelty, but from fear. Fear of comparison, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough for the people who raised us, loved us, shaped us. That doesn't excuse what Rachel did. It doesn't erase the years of deception or the financial mess she created. But understanding her fear helped me lay down some of my anger. Not all of it, just enough to breathe again. And in the space that anger left behind, something else began to grow. Truth, boundary, and a quieter, steadier kind of peace. I don't know what the future holds for us. Families don't heal in a straight line. There will be setbacks. There will be days when old wounds ache again. But now, we have something we didn't have before. The willingness to face our truth, no matter how uncomfortable. If you listened this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever loved someone who hurt you, not because they're bad, but because they're broken in a place you can't see? And if you were in my shoes, would you have chosen justice, distance, forgiveness, or something in between? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Your stories, your wisdom, your reflections, they help others more than you know. And if this story touched you in any way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the channel so we can keep sharing stories that heal, challenge, and connect us. Thank you for listening.